Hey everybody, Scott from Dicey Decisions. We are here doing an episode of Dorky Decisions. I am joined by Sean, who plays Kid, and Jack, who
Hi.
plays Tarlin.
Nope.
Um,
Nope.
and
Nope.
I mean, Jack, who plays Sliver.
Yep.
So in the chat, we've got Justin, who plays Tarlin, and Brandy, who plays Kaleri, one of our guest characters. Anyhow, we thought we would take tonight and kind of do a little bit of a campaign recap, a kind of what's what with the campaign. We've had a pretty major happening recently. Um, if you are the type of person that cares about spoilers, you should not watch this Dorky Decisions until after you've watched episode 27, which should be coming out on YouTube any day now. But it was our most recently streamed episode this past Friday night. So I'll give you all a minute to pause this or stop it, or you can decide to watch it later if you wanted to have the unspoiled version. That being said, we're not going to hold back. We're going to talk about all sorts of topics tonight because we figured we should get this out there for folks that wanted to hear, as well as for ourselves, actually.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe we should name this one post episode 27 so that it's clear in the title.
So anyway,
Spoilers.
post episode 27.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can do that. Given that, Jack, you've gathered some of the questions. I know some of our players have given us questions to ask each other and whatnot, as well as we have some questions of our own to ask each other. So why don't you start us off, Jack?
Sure. Okay. First one's mine, and I feel like we can rotate through these if y'all don't mind. So I'll go first with one of my own questions, and I'll filter in other people's as we go. The first one is, how did Scott determine the order that the characters spoke to the Raven Queen?
Oh, so in our most recent episode, we had a raised dead situation where the characters had to talk to the Raven Queen and and gain access to the deceased. How did I determine the order of which I did that? Honestly, in the moment, I knew I wanted Sliver last.
Interesting. Okay.
I knew I wanted Sliver last because of the way I had the Raven Queen manifest themselves in the different ways for the different characters.
Gotcha.
I felt it
Yeah.
most impactful that for you, you brought. Yeah, you had to be Tarlin's body. You had to have Tarlin's body be the one addressing you.
Okay.
Everyone else in their backstories had villains that I could have the Raven Queen manifest. See, my whole concept with that was that you brought that with you. The characters brought that with them. It wasn't the Raven Queen bringing it up. It's who you brought into the room, right? It's the baggage you carry was who was going to manifest as the image of the Raven Queen. So for Kid, as an example, it was Kid's abuser. For Ashrina, it was her deadbeat father, who was also an abuser. There's a lot of abuse in people's backstories.
Sure.
And whatnot. For Garrick, there was a slew of characters in his backstory I could have chose. I felt it more gut-wrenching to take the very first character from his backstory, which was a young kid that he had to watch waste away from disease and die.
And those things were potentially things that the rest of us knew nothing about. It's just,
Right.
yeah. And that the characters may not have thought about themselves for a long time. And suddenly here it is.
Yeah, the only one I think that was the obvious one, and maybe this to answer more of your question, why did I go with the order I did? I think I went with Ashrina first because I knew that you all would know the imagery. You all would, because you all
Right,
got to meet
right,
her
right, right.
father,
Uh-huh.
right? So all the characters got to meet her father. So that was a big reason I did Ashrina first and you last. Garrick and Kid could have been in either order. I think it's who I looked up at on the screen at, who I felt was making eye contact with me on our
Right.
Discord channel.
Well,
So,
here's
That
the
makes
reason
sense.
I ask. Because as the person who kept like, oh shit, am I next? Am I next? And we're ticking off the boxes of the things you can say to Tarlin. And the whole time I'm like, okay, he said that one. I can't mention that. He said, because I want it to be slightly different. Until it got to, there was really only one or two things I could mention that I had on my list. But then I had to boil it down to what would a kid, a teenager say, and it got real simple real quick. But yeah, it was kind of semi harrowing, like nail chewing, as the characters went one by one. And did you feel like that too, Sean? Like, shit, when am I going?
Yeah, a little bit, though. I kind of find that if I think too hard about it, I start to make myself nervous. So the way that I kind of approach something like that best is just to kind of not think about what I'm going to say particularly. Because, I had some sort of ideas about what I would say, right? But I didn't necessarily expect that our backstories would feature so prominently, right? Like I was going to try and reveal some things about Kid through how he felt about Tarwin and his kind of understanding how he is connecting to the group in a way that maybe he hasn't to anybody before. But then all of a sudden there he was. So,
So we
Mr.
missed
Meyer
out
was
on a couple opportunities of hearing a little bit about your character.
possibly, well, and I mean, I'll say that is something that is a little bit difficult about Kid is that he is sort of built as a cipher, right? Like he is submerged a lot of himself in his work, and like he doesn't have a lot of a personality, right? Because the whole character concept, right, is that he, is a very very good assassin and takes on a lot of different personalities and sort of doesn't have one of his own per se, and also doesn't really connect to people very well or very easily. So in a lot of ways, Kid has been difficult to embody because he's been very surface level.
Right. And we get it. For the first few episodes, it was like you were just quiet the whole time. You just did your job. But tell me if I'm wrong, Scott. Lately, Kid's personality is like explosively angry. Like all of a sudden he'll just say, fuck you. And that type of thing.
well, I mean, I know every parent shouldn't have favorites, but of the interactions with the Raven Queen, my back and forth with you, Sean, was by far my most favorite to do because you gave as good as I gave, and you gave me such a glorious moment to do the whole face shifting to all the dead. You just gave that to me as a gift on a platter because you came after me. So I'm like, oh, you want to talk? Let's talk.
That kind of threw me for a loop. I will say I wasn't really sure how to respond to that exactly. That as a player and as the character, I was like, oh, okay, that
Yeah.
I guess I have to own that. You know what I mean? But I think too, right? Like the thing about Kid is that for his, I guess, as far as his backstory is concerned, right, his trauma really comes from violence, and that comes out as anger a lot of the time, right? And so that's the way that I really kind of was able to approach him, sort of breaking that ice and coming out the other side of that and having something sort of meaningful to say, right? So I guess that was kind of, and I think that is going to be really good kind of going forward too, because now I think that his, like his backstory is there a little bit for you to play with, Scott, right? Like for the player to kind of like start to be revealed a little bit more to the other players and things like that, now that he's kind of like there and there's sort of some intimations that he's kind of been associated with the class as well, and is sort of the reason that I'm on the path that I'm on. It's sort of the anti-Wadwick, right?
Right.
In a lot of ways, where Wadwick sort of shows Sliver that, things are really tough and there are a lot of consequences for your actions, but the things that you're doing are for the greater good, and you have to be mindful of that and sort of express your inner goodness through that, right? Whereas Kid's upbringing was very much about, all of those abilities are really for self-enrichment, for your own gain, right? For exercising power over other people,
right?
And it's very different. So kind of wishing that you were not that person for a really long time, you know what I mean, and then kind of being thrust into a position where you can prove that you aren't for the first time, right? Is pretty big. So
I have to say, you have held the cards very close to your vest for a long, long time. And it's really cool to experience, he's not just a quiet player. He's fucking acting, and he's been acting the whole time. That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, it's hard to find purchase in some of the scenes, right? As Kid, because I'm just sort of like the menacing figure in the background, right? I'm not, I in a lot of ways, I'm more engaged as a player than as a character, because the character is so invested in not really having a personality.
Right.
And so it's really fun to now be able to start getting some of that out.
Right. For a long time, having, drawn the picture from your description, he's a very nondescript dude, very stoic. I had no idea of anything about him, really. You could have literally said anything at all, and I would have thought, oh, well, that's who Kid is. It's been very, very shielded until finally he's like, hey, there's an expression on his face. What's wrong?
Yeah.
And you guys had a scene together in our latest episode too, which oddly enough, that scene happened and it unfolded in the way that it did, of you two bonding a little bit as you went on a walk. And just I have to do a shout out for Justin, who plays Tarlin, because somehow he saw that coming because of what he put in Kid's letter, which isn't fully revealed yet, but what he put in Kid's letter tied perfectly in with the fact that you two went on that walk and had the conversation you had, and he didn't know the conversation was going to happen, and you didn't know the letter was coming. So unbelievably uncanny.
So
I'm the only one who doesn't know what the hell you're talking about right now.
That's true.
Yep.
That is very true. That is true. And it's more of that cards to the vest thing, right?
Yep.
That one,
there's a
play out though.
I think so as well, and I think I think probably Gundrick will as well in some ways, because they're like, You wouldn't know it though, but I sent Scott like 6 paragraphs worth of backstory for Kid, you know? So, I mean, like, there's some stuff there to kind of play with.
For sure.
So, you know, I don't know. It'll be interesting. And I do think that the letter will probably play out probably sooner than that. You know what I mean? I think that there's a lot that'll be happening in the next few sessions that'll kind of lead in that direction.
All right, so we got another question.
Do you have one, Sean?
Yeah, you know, this one is just for my own personal edification. This is for you, Jack. Do you come up with the song titles in advance, or is that off the cuff? Because you are killing me. You are absolutely killing me. And just every time you have an opportunity to be Sarsaparilla Silvertongue, I'm just so excited. And so I just have to know how much planning kind of goes into that.
John, you're my biggest fan.
I am.
No, during the game, when a lot of times when things come up that I think might be funny, while other people are talking, like if anybody's listening to us and Sliver goes quiet for a while, I'm feverishly writing down a whole bunch of bullshit, crossing out half of it and keeping some of it and just throwing it at the wall and see what gets a snicker, because I don't know. It's just fun for me to like constantly be bringing these little tidbits, like bringing back the apple pie every once in a while, all these bean juice, stuff like that keeps coming up. I love just inserting them. So I always want to, like, when I come up with something and it gets a giggle, then I'll try to bring it back later and see if it's still as effective. So I'm just goofing, really.
Well, I gotta say that I look forward to it every time. Every time you start just going like unspooling, I'm like, yep. It's really good. It's really fun.
So Sliver as a character is so unlike me that it's really kind of fun to just see how much everyone is willing to put up with from me before they just start talking over me. So I just keep it coming as like a super ADHD annoying teenager might do.
Well,
but thanks. Yeah, it's fun.
Something the audience definitely does not know is that when we were setting out to make characters, you originally didn't want to play a bard.
No,
You
in
were
fact,
scared of it.
it was. I tried to play a bard way back when I started playing, like 4 years ago. Everybody's saying, "Oh, bards are the most powerful class, and they can do everything." So I tried to play a bard, and it felt wrong. I was trying to play it like everybody else, played bards, trying to seduce things and whatever, and it didn't feel right at all. And sometimes Sliver doesn't exactly either. Very different from me. Like, he says shit that wouldn't even cross my mind. But
Well,
I
it
feel like,
seems to have.
Yep.
yeah, I guess subconsciously all that shit crosses my mind.
Well,
Yeah.
if anybody that knows that Jack is, not only does he do all the character art that's on the show, but he also does he has written songs as Sliver and recorded them, and we use them in our breaks on the stream. And one of them, I was watching last week's episode to pull clips from it just today, and we got to intermission, and I was busy cleaning up something, and one of the songs came on, which is one of his one really sad song, an angry song, and it totally fit what just happened with the loss of Tarlin. That I just started weeping, and the fact that you were ever afraid to play this character boggles my mind because of how much you've thrown into this character. So I just
I
really
think,
appreciate it.
well, thank you. And I think that before we started 6 months ago or however long, I couldn't have done that. It's been a slow evolution that I've just, you know, been able to be vulnerable a little bit more over time. Not that, like, I used to play guitar. I've played guitar in front of people at weddings and stuff, but uh, I'm literally sitting in my living room playing chords on the guitar. I press record on my phone all by myself, and then I press stop. That's it, and that's what we get. And it's fun. I mean, I like the way my songs are turning out, and so that kind of keeps me going in character and all that. It's just building on itself. It's helping me really bring him as much to life as I've been able to. Thanks for the question. That's kind of it's really flattering to hear you be a fan.
Honor related, I've got a good question that kind of dovetails off of that. You just mentioned, working up to vulnerability, working up to being able to do this with a character. And as players, for the both of you, how hard was it to be as vulnerable as you both were this week?
That is that's Ashrina's question.
Oh, is it?
How do y'all get into character headspace for times that are going to be super vulnerable, like this one? Do you find it difficult? Exactly your question. So,
Awesome.
Sean, why don't you go with that one?
Well, I think that it only happens when it just happens. And so I guess that's really a kind of a hard. What I mean by that is that's not something you can prepare for or force. I don't think. I think that happens at the tables where every player is kind of coming with that energy, right? Like there are probably a few campaigns I've played in over my 30 odd year D&D tabletop role playing game career, right, where you have players at the table that are willing to kind of suspend their disbelief in a way that it makes it easy for you to do that. And then I think when you kind of stop thinking about the separation between you, the player, and you, your character, and you sort of get into the scene, then vulnerability just happens, right? There is no distinction between Sean, the player, and Kid, the character. At that point, I'm in Kid's head, right? Like trying to respond to Scott in a way that feels authentic. I'm not really thinking about what I'm doing anymore, I guess, if that makes sense. And so I guess the best way to answer that question is to say that I prepare for that by playing games with you guys. Playing games with players that all want to tell a story, that all want to be vulnerable, that all respect the energy that takes and want to play off of it, right? Like if you're in a group that's very crunch heavy, very mechanics heavy, very dungeon diving heavy, right? Those moments just aren't going to happen because that's not the energy at the table, right? And that's not to say that playing a game in that way is somehow not right or worse or better or whatever. It's not a value judgment, right? But that's where the vulnerability, that's how I prepare for that vulnerability. That's where that vulnerability comes from, is feeling safe with the people that I'm playing with, right? And it's super weird doing it on stream at first, but that's why I don't watch the stream while I'm doing this. I am on a Discord chat with my friends playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? Like that. So kind of shutting out all of that other stuff and distilling it down to just the table and the story that we're trying to tell, I guess.
Well, do you think that if we were in person sitting around the table, you could still bring that? Sounds like you
Yeah,
could.
I think so. I think so. And I think of one of the first times I ever played D&D with Dan, and I was playing in one of his homebrew campaigns, and it was in the moment, in character. Dan and I we got into a shouting match at our friend Dre's like living room, right? Just like that, because that was just what was happening at the moment. It was just, and so like, yeah, when you kind of get that energy happening, right? I think that it really can lead to some really cool stuff.
Yeah, I'll say I think that this week felt more like we were all in person than anything else yet. I have had more um, more emotionally invested moments in a live game than I ever have in this environment. I was actually kind of worried we wouldn't be able to get that feel because we have that separation, we have the technology between us and whatnot, and I think we just all pushed beyond that for whatever reason, or saw beyond that for whatever reason, or just were moved far enough beyond that to make it all happen. I think it was really great. Um,
Well,
as an
let me
answer
tell
to the same question, Justin in the chat just said that he uses music to get into his character's headspace.
Interesting.
He has songs or genres that he associates with a particular character, and then he preps when he knows what's coming. So, as an example, Tarlin is very much a 2000 emo kind of character, and before this last episode, he listened to Evanescence, Lithium, and Papa Roach Scars as
Interesting.
examples to put him
That's
in the
so cool.
headspace of the character.
I don't know what my character's music would be. That's fun.
I think it's the song Sliver is currently writing.
Well, maybe. I mean, but it's super. That one is
Probably just
super
has
sad.
like a constant like just track in his head going at different times, right? There's just various and sundry little ditties and whirls and loops.
Now,
Yeah, maybe.
for me,
Well, what about you, Jack?
obviously. Oh yeah, go ahead, Jack.
How do
Yeah.
you get into character like that?
So for this, okay, normally I use the voice, and it might not sound much, but I raise my voice just a little bit, and usually after a few sentences, I'm in. I do think about it, on and off the day of, usually like what are we doing, reminding myself what's going on, what Sliver would be thinking of. But for this episode, I am completely opposite from you, Sean. I wrote myself a script. And hopefully it didn't come off like that, but I'm holding my
No.
phone in front of my face and I'm reading off of my phone as I'm
It,
literally weeping. I can't control. I'm like choking myself up. Hopefully nobody could tell that much, but it was fucked up. I can't believe how much I was crying. I usually don't cry, except at funerals, and so that's really appropriate.
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
I guess that
so yeah,
tracks.
I read the script, and then once I was done, I'd had my say. Scott starts asking questions as the Raven Queen, and I'm like, oh fuck, I don't have a script for this. So I winged it there, but I was at that point I was deep inside the character, and I was just feeling it. So a lot of times I do write myself a lot of notes like this is what has to happen, this is what I'm going for, this is my goal for tonight, and these are some things I'm going to say out loud.
Gotcha.
So I was cognizant of the tears to the point of like I could hear it in your voices, all of you when you would have those emotional moments, and you in particular, Jack, when you would really get choked up. I was constantly trying to also take care of my friend Jack and take care of my friend Sean, but also still play this game and have this hard thing happen. Like I was given gut punches and then just sitting back going, I hope my friends are okay.
Yeah. Anytime you see me going like this during the conversation, that's like, holy crap! I wanted to pull my glasses off and just rub my eyes and stuff. But yeah, that you did Scott just handled it great. And so let's follow up with you. How I guess you didn't have to open up and be fully vulnerable right there, but tell me what you're thinking.
Except I had to portray Joe.
That's true.
Having to portray Joe put me in the same kind of boat as you all were in a way, because I had to portray someone from everybody's backstory, but the ones I did for you guys were easy because it was just the Raven Queen in their form. I didn't have to be Kid's abuser. I just had to have the visage of Kid's abuser, right? But I had to be Joe because he had to reach and get to Joe. So I spent a little time thinking of how am I going to do this, and how am I going to have this really tender moment and be able to give whatever Justin was giving, you know what I mean? Like to match his energy in that moment.
Yeah.
And so I spent a little time really thinking of, honestly, gonna sound real corny, but my friendship with Justin. It really informed how I would handle that moment. I really thought about my friendship with him, and it was really it allowed me to be tender because I love Justin, and it allowed me to be tender in that way, to portray Joe in that way. And I had the luxury of knowing it was coming. You all didn't really know what was coming, and you had to find the tenderness around what I presented.
Yeah. And not only that, I mean, we were all gifted 500 gold piece diamonds. So I was certainly under the impression that Tarlin was going to bring all of us back, and sort of expected he would do the same favor for us if we tried to bring him back. But no, I guess not.
Well, Justin's listening right now, so he's probably crying a little bit listening to Scott saying how much he loves him.
No, he called me a sucker. He called me a sucker in the chat for loving him.
Through his tears, I'm sure.
So let's throw another one out there. What do you got, Jack?
This is another one from the player who does Ashrina. What's been your favorite moment during the campaign so far, both RP and combat?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Amanda, stop asking these hard ones.
Well, you Scott, read it, so you go. No, you go first. No, you did this to us.
All right. Okay. I don't think oh boy, I don't know that I have a favorite combat moment. Maybe y'all can give me 3 choices and I'll pick them. But as for combat, I mean, I love 2 things. When the rogues fucking crit somebody, I'm always cheering. I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be good. And when Garrick pulls out a smite, which he rarely does, when he smites somebody, both of those times I'm super excited. For myself, I don't. My character's not much of a combatant. He casts spells from the background and kind of slaps people away. I really don't have any favorite moments. Although I mean, while we're playing them, it's all fun. But to pick one over the other, I can't.
For me,
but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to add for the RP. The RP that Scott and I shared with the prison warden, that was fucking great. when Sliver was trying to charm the
Oh yeah.
prison warden,
Oh yeah.
and she was like, and Scott was like, "Bring it," and Scott and I were like making mental love to each other. It was both very strange and really, really like we were both into it. That was great. This last episode, of
I
course, was
I had to miss that night, so I watched a little bit of that, but I did not get to see that live, and I'm very sad to have missed it.
So that moment, just riffing on that moment for a second, like I had very little in planned for that character. This is the warden in the module that we're running. We're running Keys from the Golden Vault for anybody who doesn't know that. You know, they give you a little bit of information about this warden, but they don't give you any personal anything at all personal about who this warden is. So, and I had not prepped that. So Jack's like, I'm gonna go seduce the warden. And then I in on the spot had to come up with what is this warden's love life like? What is this warden's home life? You know, who is this warden outside of a warden? Right? Like I just had to come up with something that was so specific to her that would work. And oddly enough, the thing that I put in my head was this has got to be the loneliest job. Right? This has just got to be the loneliest job. You're the warden of a high security prison in the middle of the freaking ice tundra in the middle of nowhere. You don't have any joy in your life whatsoever. Right? So I had her melancholy. And Sliver caught on to that and just played into like showing her a good time. And she fell in love with it. She loved it. So, and that was just, that happened all in that moment you're watching it.
right, and it wasn't long. It was like
No,
2 minutes.
but it was still one of those things that makes playing this game so much fun for me is those things that you don't plan for, that you don't prep. You know, you watch a lot of, DM suggestion videos and TikToks and I'm telling you, anybody who tells you do a lot of prep work, stop listening to them. Like, do as minimal prep as you need to do. Just the work you need to do is being in the moment, because that's what allowed that to happen. That is what allowed that to happen. If I had done a ton of prep work and had this fully realized backstory for that character that had nothing to do with her being seduced, we wouldn't have had that.
Right.
She, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
And because I didn't prep it, it allowed me to yes end. As far as my favorite combat, I have to say the overall favorite combat moment to me was the running combat in the casino, because it was all full of comedy and pratfalls and ridiculousness the whole time.
See, I'm so glad that you said that, because now I can say something else. Because what I wanted to say as a runner-up, when Jack, you said that you don't do combat, Sliver, you're not really into combat, Sliver doesn't like combat. So you find every possible way to break combat. You charm people, you mesmerize them, you trick them, you disappear, you. So every time the Benny Hill music starts playing, it's because you're playing it on the mandolin, and it's incredible.
I figured that's my job. I can't hurt anybody. I can shoot little darts at them, but there's really no damage I can do. So my job is to mess with people. And
so like that is always one of my favorite combat sort of just generally. So Scott, I'm really glad you brought up the casino, because that's a perfect sort of expression of that just unhinged as of all of us just kind of running around
partying 5 ways.
Well,
quick.
And the funny thing is that I got really scared because, Sliver triggered the boss fight by himself. Like, that was scary. And there were no fudged rolls
That was
anything
really
in
scary
that.
for me.
But it worked out perfectly, but all because of random dice karma.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
it was
Sliver almost
crazy.
died.
Almost died, yes.
That was the second adventure. Oh, speaking of favorite dice rolls, every time that I have rolled a performance, and I'm probably going to jinx it here, but every time I've rolled a performance, I get better and better and better. And those are my favorite rolls because to me, Sliver he doesn't want to be really who he is. He just learned he can play really good guitar or whatever. And fuck yeah, he can. And so that's suddenly like, this is my new shiny thing. I've got to do this. And so every time I roll a performance, it's really good, and that makes me laugh so much.
Well, next week's episode, not to shamelessly plug, but you're gonna have your chance to make a bunch of performance checks because you'll be performing
Yeah,
at the biggest tavern in Amman. So
I'm sure I'm going to start failing soon, but hopefully not.
Right after, now that you've said something, yeah.
Yeah. So Sean, let's hear
hold
what
on.
Sean. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Before you
Go
get
ahead.
there, because Justin posted his favorite RP in the chat, was the constant back and forth with Shrina about the cart and rent and those kind of things he felt were really endearing. It built off
Yes.
of Amanda and Justin's personal friendship, that they could give each other shit knowing that they aren't taking it personally. So they brought that relationship into their two characters
Yeah.
in such a wonderful way.
Absolutely.
And his favorite combat, which is a moment I had almost forgotten till he put it there, is when he came in like a wrecking ball. When Tarlin balled up inside of his plate mail armor and busted into the tower from the roof.
Saved my life.
That was
Yep,
amazing.
yep, and saved kid's life. Yep. All right, Sean, did you have any other?
Yeah, so I will say that my favorite combat moment was turn one of the first fight we had with the Myriad, where Magonius Magungle just comes wandering out, one single solitary mook, just one, and fireballs him into the next universe. There's just like no reason to fireball one unstatted mook, but no, all right, we're doing this. And then he's like doing like cantrips for the whole rest of the combat. But by God, that guy died.
Oh,
And it was so perfect for that character because of course that character would just go off. Like, of course he would. So that's my favorite combat moment.
that
was
is a
Magonius.
fantastic combat moment, and shout out to John, who is a guest player here with us, who plays Magonius. Magonius has us laughing every time he is on stream with us, and we are blessed to have him with us.
Yes. And I guess your favorite RP moment, there are a lot, but I really have to give Dan his flowers for last episode when he read the letter and his voice just like broke like halfway through. I almost lost it on camera, just absolutely almost lost it. He really had me. And so I really have to give Dan his flowers for Garrett for last episode. It was incredible.
Garrick
Dan.
had multiple speeches in that episode that totally just gripped my heart.
Yeah, and they kind of kept crescendoing, but the one that got me was just the very simple, just like voice break at the end, just in the letter, and it was just like he was in character and his character was it was just it was perfect, and it was really incredible, a wonderful moment.
Oh, I got to give a shout out to. I totally forgot this. So, Sean, this is a throwback to when you asked before how I come up with this shit. all of those your mama stuff, your mama's outside sucking my balls, that type of thing. I had so much fun in that.
Oh God. Yeah, it's probably a little freeing to kind of be a 16-year-old a little bit again and not really kind of think of so much about propriety, and also about, you can just kind of, like you said, throw anything at the wall and it'll stick because you're being so earnest about it. It's just like he's so. And yet another thing, at like a minotaur, right? Like, this kid shouldn't be fighting a minotaur, but there he is. Like, you know what, minotaur, your mother was a cow, and not even like a good cow. Like, she produced no milk.
Yeah, I you crack me up with those every time, and uh, Amanda has joined us in the chat here on the stream, and she just said that by far the Yo Mama jokes are her favorite RP, and she goes, and the fact that they aren't even vicious mockeries is what makes that he does it when he's doing Dissonant Whispers or he's doing something else.
Anything else, casting an illusion.
It's just funny. Anyway, but I hate to spoil the mood from what you said about Dan, because he broke me too. Dan, wow, man, he really dug deep. He
did.
He flashed us with his soul.
It started with his drunk bitching at the Raven Queen, and then his actual conversation with the Raven Queen during the ceremony, and then
it was amazing. Good job, Dan.
Yeah, and also, like, because I've played Dan for 20 odd years now, and you see that out of Dan when he is having a really good time. You know what I mean? When he is also feeling comfortable, and you know what I mean? When he digs deep like that, it's when he's really enjoying himself. You know what I mean? And so also that was really great. He's getting into the character the same way I am, and the same way we all kind of are. That was just really wonderful to see.
Right.
Yeah.
And folks, just in case you're just a little touch of backstory. The first time I ever played with Sean, I'm a big fan of Sean too, because first time I ever played in a campaign with Sean was about a year ago. We were doing Call of Cthulhu, and he played a character that was like 10 times smarter than anybody else, and he kept nailing it every single time. It was so good. He was playing like a drunken playboy, but he was so fucking smart. He knew everything before the shit was revealed, and I was instantly smitten by Sean as a player.
Well, thank you. I will say that I actually wanted to mention that because when you said that you lead with the voice for Sliver, I am reminded of the Call of Cthulhu campaign with your Southern accent, and again with God, what is his? He's got like a 6-word name. What is his name? Stone Breaks.
Oh yeah.
Storm breaks on stone, like rock, something like. Yeah, I can't. He's got like a 6-word name, but every time it's a voice. That character comes with a voice, and it was.
I need the voice. Yeah.
It was very central to your Call of Cthulhu character and the way that you approach that game. Very thoughtful, very sort of genteel, southern. It was just very. It was. And when you said that, I was like, huh. And now all of the other games that we've played together made a lot of sense when you said that. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Yeah. In fact, for Sliver, I had a whole different dialect, and the first session when I spoke, it disappeared, and my voice was there, and I was like, well, this is what we're going with, boys. Okay, here's our next question. You ready?
Sure.
This is from Justin earlier. If you could play another of the PCs at the table, which one
I was really
interests
you
the most?
Ooh.
Let's go with Scott. If you had to play one of us.
Yeah. If you had to play a character.
Oh, I already know. You'd play Tarlin because he's a halfling cleric.
Actually, I'm gonna wimp out on this one, and it's not really wimping out. It's actually how I feel. There's no way I could do these characters the justice you guys are doing them. I really like all across the board. Like Ashreen is endearing. I stabbed the bags of flour, and that she checks in with her mom, and all of that. Like I wouldn't think of half of the things you guys are thinking of. So as far as that goes, game mechanics wise, um, uh, I've never seen a dual wielding paladin before. I think that's an interesting concept to play. Um, and I really like where Dan's going with his paladin, as far as like a character build goes. I think it's very, very interesting. Um, and I'd be interested to try that character build, but not play Garrick. Like I couldn't step into those shoes.
It's because he let his hair down, right? And then you said, well, I can't do that. So
But
sorry, Scott. You got mad at me.
No.
wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, Garrick has completely changed almost his full persona. He's on some sort of spiritual quest, I think. He's stirring up the pot.
Well, I mean, during the ritual, he called out and gave prayer to the
Moonweaver. And stopped using his shield. He's like, man, if shit doesn't go right, you can fuck off.
Well, right. Well, we're all on a holy quest now to kill God, right? After the last session. So, yeah, I say he's on a spiritual journey.
I think we might be on a journey to kill Joe, and then Carlin will come back.
That's terrible.
Yeah, I'm a terrible person.
Let those little halflings be.
Sean, do you have one? Who would you play?
I have two. I have two answers to this question. Both of them are more mechanical than anything else. So I also just kind of have to say, with like what Scott said, I don't think I could embody any of these characters in the way that they are embodied, and I would not really want to try doing that. You know what I mean? Really, honestly. But I would like to try playing Sliver, because a lot of the things that Kid doesn't get to use very much have to do with disguise. He's got a +9 to his performance checks. He has a very high charisma, right? Like, the idea behind Kid, right, as an assassin, a lot of the class abilities have to do with taking on another identity, forging documents, doing a lot of the things that Sliver does a million times better with magic, right? So just kind of from like a character concept perspective, it's kind of the way I envisioned sort of approaching being a thief. And so I think just the synergy there with kind of my own sort of mindset about what it would be like to be an assassin or be a thief and put on a bunch of different identities. And the way Sliver does that, I think is really, really cool. And I really like that. And then a little bit Tarlin, because I'm very jealous that he had the stats to multi-class and Kid did not. And I would have liked to multi-class Kid, and I did not get to take the levels that I wanted to take. So just as a slightly personal, on a slight envious note, I wish that I could be multi-classed like Tarlin.
I think that Kid's real story arc is behind the scenes. Like, how many people has he assassinated in the political realm that we just don't know about? Like, his job really is away from us. He's over there knifing people and slitting throats and whatever. and he's really powerful in the people who know, but we don't know.
Well, he is and he isn't, right? Like, I mean, he has that cachet, but at the end of the day, he's sort of a low-level recruit still. He's in his early to mid-20s. So, I mean, he's kind of farther along in the class hierarchy, and he's got a lot of kind of more jobs under his belt. And yeah, a lot of the times in between episodes where you don't see Kid, he is doing things to kind of like further his sort of employment with the. He's probably one of the only characters who actually was like fully employed within the class, like doing some of its dirty work that didn't kind of already sort of, Garrick has come to the city and Kid's job was to spy on him, right? Like, and also to spy on Tarlin and make sure that Tarlin wasn't going to have a change of heart about joining the class and sell us all out, right? Like, my connections to the PCs were as a class agent, as monitoring for the spiraling of the blades.
Dude,
right?
you just spilled the beans. I had no idea of either one of those things.
That came out.
Still doesn't know.
Yeah,
but that did come out in one of the scenes that I had with Warren, right, where I talked about how I think that Garrick is probably going to be a good asset, and I think Tarwin is in a good place. And then I kind of went back and said, well, actually, I've changed my mind. He saved my life. He's kind of, I think he's really solid, right? So that was also the start of Kid's evolution, where kind of through this job, it kind of, well, actually, no, this isn't just a job. Like, I really like this guy. Like, this guy's like went above. He saved my life. Like, I'm starting to really depend on these people, right? And so that was sort of the start of his evolution. But yeah, there is a lot to play with Kid as we move into the fallout of the Myriad War. And as we sort of look at what's next for us as clasp agents and as clasp heroes, there's probably, a lot that can pull us in there. And you have some really good threads too with Wadwick and his disappearance, right? And now Garrett kind of moving out of the church and kind of into this place where he's not really sure what he's doing next. We're all kind of like primed for what's next with our character. Shrina, now kind of has to manage the loss of her best friend, right? And kind of like, kind of figure out how she relates to the mission and what's going on, right? And how that relates to her personal mission, right? Which is really kind of moving people that really need moving, right? The class is a means to an end. Does Shrina stick around now that her best friend is dead? Like, so it's we're all kind of like primed for the what's next, but Kid is probably the only character whose what's next is very obvious, right? The what's next is like Warren's gonna come knocking on Kid's door, probably, right? But there's also a lot that Scott can do there in terms of like you said, surprising me with consequences of actions I don't even know that I've taken, right? Like I in some ways, Kid's doings are a little bit mysterious to me as well, because I don't really know who all the political movers and shakers are in Amman. And so Scott kind of has that as a plot device he can use, right? It's not like I have been like plotting out these 50 minutes and I'm like secretly writing the history of Amman, right? Like Scott's keeping track of that in his head. So maybe there are consequences to actions that I don't even know that I've fully taken, right? So it'll be fun.
Do you keep a notebook and keep marking down all the stupid things that need to come bite us back in the ass?
I can neither confirm or deny if I have my own private Google Doc.
What's a Google Doc, Scott?
You have one
to the rest of us.
But no, I mean there's connections to backstories that still will bear fruit in the ongoing missions and whatnot, and things are seeded throughout. I think Sliver's relationship with Roderick was almost the first and forefront connection to backstory, was front and center at the early parts of the campaign, which is why I had fun and now he's disappeared. right?
Right.
Like,
That was, yeah.
so
We'll get to that.
that's a no, we won't. I'm not telling you shit. But that that's those kind of things have the potential to pop up as they come up. And one of the great things, just from a world building kind of point of view, is I'm taking a D&D written set of heists and I'm weaving it into the world of Taldore plus the world of your backstories and trying to make it all feel cohesive and a campaign as opposed to here's a series of missions, right?
Right.
So I'm tying this and that one into the myriad. I'm trying this and that one into a backstory. I'm creating an NPC out of nowhere that all of a sudden you care about, like Lou, or you know what I mean. So
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
Oh, Lou.
a lot of it
Well,
We got to
is
figure that one out too. We got to go find Lou.
right.
Well,
So
Scott, in
there's
case you can't tell, we're loving every second of it.
I really appreciate it, and I'm absolutely adoring every second of it myself. So it's so rewarding on so many levels, um, and and it's tricky to try to find ways to make something that's pre-written fit
Sure.
and have something. So I find a piece of it or a snippet of it that I can tweak a little bit and then make it kind of fit.
The museum lady.
And I'm also trying to be true to some of the lore of Critical Role, because we are playing in their world and I don't want to disavow all of it. Obviously, I can do with it what I want. It's our campaign. But at the same time, I kind of want it to feel like Taldore. And to
Sure.
make it feel like Taldore, I've got to match what they've done, what people know of Taldore, not just
And really, you've
my
allowed
idea
us
of it.
to meet some of them, some of the famous characters. It's been fucking great. Like, hell, holy crap. We had a moment to talk to what's his name, Magnificent Magic guy,
Oh,
the magic shop guy.
Gilmore. Yeah,
Gil-
you met
yeah,
Gilmore, right?
we met him.
And,
Right.
and
Although,
Sparling Shen, very briefly, right? Like,
Yep. Yep.
and the cleric, the blood cleric.
Yeah,
So
and it was earlier on. I resisted that because I didn't want first level characters interacting with these big names.
totally
It
cool.
didn't
That's
make sense,
it feels good.
which is why I created Irakin. Right? You needed a connection to the clasp that wasn't a spiraling
Right.
that was named in the Taldori book, right? So I created
Yep.
Irakin, and now you've met multiple spiralings, but you guys are 8th level now. So, that makes a lot more sense.
We still only 8th level?
Yes.
you
Okay.
sure about that? You sure
Yes.
about that? We haven't leveled.
You still haven't leveled.
That's a question from the audience. There, the chat was really concerned. Have they leveled? That's what it says. They're very concerned that we haven't leveled. Yes, all 3 people in the chat very concerned we haven't leveled.
If I could play another PC,
Mm-hmm.
Ashrina.
Wow.
Now, listen, I couldn't, like you say. First of all, I just wish I was as witty as Amanda and Justin. They're just cracking them one after another. I can't keep up. But I love how fast she is. I love that she can run up walls. I love that she can jump off the ceiling and come down point first, like she's done a few times. I love that she saves slaves, rescues slaves. Everything that Amanda did with this character, I just love it. Even to the role play, to the mechanics, and first of all, I've never played a paladin yet. I really haven't. I'm not really interested in paladins and clerics for some reason, but But those rogues, either one of those rogues, I would play. But Ashrina, I think, more for the she's wide open. Like her soul is right here. You can see her heart beating on the surface, and while she's putting her sword through someone else's heart. I just love the way it's all coming together for that character. So that's the one I would go with.
That's really great insight. I think that her character has so many layers that are really interesting and really well thought out, and that she embodies them in combat as well as in role play. So
Amanda is so funny.
That's always great. Justin put in his that he would in the chat. He wrote that he would like to play Megonius. The persona itself seems so freeing, with that unwavering confidence and not that much between the ears. like
He's a wizard who's dumb.
Yeah, like it's a wizard who is all book knowledge, nothing else. Like there's no life knowledge or whatever. Another shout out to John and the way he plays that character. Very cool.
All right, here's our next question. In your this Scott, you may have to. I don't know how you're going to answer this. What is your character most concerned or worried about right now? Sean?
Yeah, that's for you guys.
I guess.
I can't tell you.
Yep.
Mm.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
But I can't tell you.
Okay, what's the second thing that
Kid is extremely worried about what all this means for him. Kid is a person who has spent his entire life trying extremely hard not to be noticed. And he has, for better or for worse, blundered out into a gigantic spotlight, right? And I think he's really worried about what that's going to mean for his job. I think he's worried about what that's gonna mean for really his whole life, right? Like, I mean, he's a person who tries to be everywhere and nowhere, and now all of a sudden a whole bunch of people know exactly who he is and where he is and are really interested in that stuff. And that has been a shield for him for a lot of time, right? His obscurity and his sort of everyman nature, right? And I think that time is coming to an end for Kid.
Well, he's a smart guy. He can start.
Not really. Slightly above average intellect.
Well, he knows he can do performances and disguise himself. So maybe he's no longer Kid.
That the thought had crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But I don't get that class feature for another level or two. But hold that thought.
Scott, as a DM, do you want to take this one? Like, what is the DM worried about right now?
DM's not worried. I think I feel pretty good about where the campaign's at and where it's headed. I don't have that fear.
Okay.
But one of the things that, so I rewatch every episode, and I rewatch every episode to pull snippets for social media and stuff like that. Find funny tidbits usually, although this last one, not so funny tidbits, serious tidbits.
Mm-hmm.
So as a fan of the show, as someone who's watching the story and the things that I don't have control over, I mean, I am the DM, so I have a lot of control, right? I'm worried about the group dynamic without Tarlin. I think that's going to be very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be very. Does it get darker? Because it really easily could. Does it, do individual characters want to leave? Player agency wise, that's well within rights.
Absolutely.
Like how this falls out and how this plays out, I think still has a whole lot to unravel over time. And that's not going to happen in one session or two sessions. It's going to happen over time. But as a viewer, like thinking of this as an ongoing story, that's my desire to turn the next chapter, is to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
The characters were not exaggerating when they all said that in various ways that Tarlin was the heart and soul of the group in a lot of ways.
Right. Right. For sure.
So.
Yeah.
What about you, Jack?
Well, Sliver's got a whole bunch of things he's worried about. Most concerned, probably where the hell is his master, who he's not convinced is named Roderick. Where is he, and what does that mean? Sliver's more interested as a kid about himself. Like, if Roderick's not there, then what about me? What does that mean? Because there's so many rules in place that I have not broken yet. But if he's gone for good and he left me without any word, then those rules might just go by the wayside. I can literally do whatever I want. Or can I? Because Tarlin's over my shoulder saying, you better fucking not. And at the same time...
He's not.
Yeah. And here's something that hasn't really come up. I've just alluded to it a couple times. I'm really, really... There's one thing Sliver is scared to death of. Is if he gets on stage someplace and he sees people he knows in the crowd. He's going to shit himself. He doesn't know how to handle that.
You mean his friends?
People... No, not you guys. People
that know Cam.
People who are family and, close friends with Cam, and they see this guy calling himself whatever, and I call myself on that day, and they say, hey, I know you. What do I do? Because I'm not supposed to talk to them. Those people are out of my life, but I still fucking live here. And I'm not going to give up my music, so let's see.
Be interesting.
That's what he's scared of.
So back to the first half of what you're scared of, right?
Roderick.
Master and that. Do you remember the last thing your master? I'm gonna totally screw it, Jack, right now. Do you remember the last thing your master said to you?
Yes.
What was it?
I was asking him something about Tarlin. We were going to go maybe invade one of the myriad things. And, oh man, I can't remember exactly. But I told him that, yeah, Tarlin has never let me down. He's like, it's not my father. He's like a brother. And my master said, then go protect him or go do what he says. That's the last thing I remember.
Yeah. I believe the last thing he said was, and don't worry, Tarlin will protect you.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah.
I just, I gotta say that all of a sudden I got a new fear when you just said that I'm not convinced that Roderick's name is Roderick. I was just like, oh God, what if his name's Gundrick?
All of those things are going through Silver's mind. Like, there's so much good and so much punishment and so much, like, these are the rules. They are inflexible, and I'll beat the fucking shit out of you if you break them, and I'll hug you and kiss you if you don't. You get full praise or full punishment. There's no in between. and this guy's gone, and he was in charge of your whole life. Suddenly, I'm adrift. You know, and then we had a mission, and I could stick to that. Now we don't. And Tarlin's gone, and Sliver is, well, he's got a couple friends, but they're not leading the group. They're not telling him what to do. They never have. So I just quit my job too. So all of these things.
Back to delivering pastries.
Yeah. I'm a bagel man at heart.
Oh
Yeah.
Oh, sarsaparilla bagel tongue.
Yep. So yeah, it's very much. I really struggle to keep it in the realm of, this is a kid who would be literally lost and scared to death because people have disappeared before, and this was the last one. He doesn't know what to do. So he's got his little bolt hole underground. That's what his plan is. I'm going to go hide down there. That's it. That's all I can do. Except I'm going to play on Thursday or Tuesday, whatever it is.
Tuesday, you're at the Laughing Lamia.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So is that everything?
I think that in general, yeah, unless there are a couple overlap, but I think we're done. Oh, here's one. How will you react to a new character in the group? And Scott, you alluded to that already. Who knows?
Right.
Who fucking knows?
Yeah, I mean, always character death.
Depends on who he is, right? Like we don't know this. We don't know this guy. We have no idea how we're going to react to a new character in the group.
Right.
I'm really excited to find out.
Well, one of the things that was very important to me when we set up this game, as you guys know, but the audience might not know, is that I didn't want this to be a group of class roguey type agents who didn't trust each other. So I made sure that there were connections, right, and backstories. And I had you guys kind of do a round robin of connections of somehow, so that at least there was some knowledge of the other characters to some level that would at least appease no, this guy's okay. I can trust this person. Not too sure about that guy, but they say they're okay. So maybe we're okay, that kind of thing. And we kind of round robined the connections and the backstories. And I know that Justin has done a little work with Amanda and Ashrina having his new character, and Ashrina having some level of connection as well. So that's at least something to avoid the, hey, who is this weird guy? Kind of
right.
thing.
Coming into this like traumatized, hardened group of killers, like, hey buddies, how's it going, gang? Hello, fellow class agents.
Right.
Yeah.
My only requirement for Justin putting the character together was, how are you in the clasp? Just like I said to you all. Same with this character is, how are you connected to the clasp? So that's
sorry, I misspoke there. Hardened killers and Sliver.
Right.
Because Sliver is a sweet, pure soul that we can never we have to protect the boy.
He's still fresh clay. Can go either way.
Well, it'll be interesting. That's what
Yeah. Sliver didn't
I
like
may have read.
pneumonia.
I may have read that somewhere.
What, could be interesting.
And if the next 20 odd episodes are as interesting as these previous 27 have been, we're going to be somewhere completely different by the end of all this too. So,
Absolutely.
Agreed.
yeah. Well, I think that wraps it up. Unless you guys have any last things you wanted to shout out or say.
Go ahead.
I just want to, I mean, honestly, stream whatever aside, like, I am really grateful for this opportunity to sit with 6 really good friends and just play a game that I love every Friday night. And it's been really huge for me, just kind of in general. It's bled out into a lot of other places for me. And so I just really want to say that I'm just really happy to be here. And we could turn all the Twitch shit off tomorrow, and I would still want to play this game. So
absolutely, and I think the only thing that the stream is doing is it's given us some impetus for creating story and
yeah,
raise the stakes a little bit. I
okay.
noticed that as a player and a DM, both, like, being on the stream, the stakes are raised a little bit,
Yeah.
and that, I think, has added to the enjoyment.
Yeah.
I think if it took away from the enjoyment, we'd stop doing it tomorrow, but
I
not
agree with
stop
that.
the campaign.
I agree with that. And I think that's right. I don't mean to say that that I think it has been very additive in that way, right?
Yes.
That, like, by considering, well, how does this look, right? You're kind of a little bit more invested in telling us, like, being more demonstrative, right? And when you're trying to be more demonstrative and be mindful of telling a story and kind of getting out of the mechanics, you sort of elevate into a different place that is sometimes hard to get to on the tabletop. Like, it can be difficult to move out of the systems and into the story. And as we've progressed as players and as we've progressed this campaign, I think we're really kind of like working on that in new and interesting ways, and that has been informing a lot of the energy that I bring to other tables as well.
Yeah.
And I really like that a lot.
For sure. Same thing for me. I think that this is up my game as a gamer in so many ways. And it's really a dream for me because, putting together this group, I was pulling from people I game with for 20 years, Sean, and people that I've been gaming with for how many years now, Jack? Are we
At least 4 or so.
Are we at
4 or
4
5,
now?
probably.
At least,
Yeah.
maybe more. Probably more.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And gosh, you and I have talked about doing this since the day we first met, I think.
Right. We talked about this real early on, putting this together, and
Yep.
Justin bringing in Amanda into our circle and what she brings to the table. Like, this is just a nice conglomeration. And then you add in the guest appearances by John and Brandy coming in, and all of us with varying years of experience, some massive and some not so massive.
And don't forget Corin.
And Corin filling in and playing characters when people couldn't be there. Absolutely. All of that to say that, like, every piece matters to what we're doing and has mattered.
I agree.
It's been feeling really, really good. But it's just been so rewarding. Rewarding is the best word. You have the best
I
word.
agree. Listen, when I told my wife, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be available any Friday nights from now on.
Yeah.
It better be worth it. And fuck, is it worth it? It's so very, very worth it. She may not see it, but I wouldn't change this for anything. And I think the stream is important because it holds us accountable. We have to be here. We can't skip a week, just because we're busy. We make room for it. It's just it's purposeful now. It's not just playing. It's for us. It's the one thing that we can say that's what we're doing because we want it and we need it.
So, for any of you that have made it through and watched all of this, we would love to hear your feedback. If you've watched the 27 episodes, or if you haven't watched but 1 or 2, we would love to get your feedback. So, we have a link tree, Dicey Decisions RPG. where all of our social media links are. It's right there on the stream, right up here.
Here it is. Ta-da!
Yeah, so please check it out. See us and comment on something you see. Interact with us. Join our Discord. We can talk to you there about stuff too. Just interaction would be great. We interact all week long with each other in between streams in friendship and in game terms. But we, having more people to interact with would be wonderful. And Justin says in the chat you can get to know him, and he's amazing. He says so himself.
Of course.
A completely unbiased source, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it here first.
All right. Well, we are Dicey Decisions. Thank you for joining us for our episode of Dorky Decisions as we do a recap of our campaign, Finding Purchase. See you on Friday back here on Twitch. And have a good week, everybody.
Love you guys.
Good night.